Hey Jeff, just sending you this message to let you know that Nike launched a brand new boot today. It's called the Phantom Vision. It also doesn't look like it has any laces. Is this Nike's first laceless boot? And will you be reviewing them? What's going on, guys? Josh from soccerreviewsforyou.com, bringing you my review plus on-feet video of the brand new Nike Hypervenom. I want to call these Hypervenoms so bad. The Nike Phantom Vision Elite DF. In, of course, the raised on concrete colorway, one of 3 colors that'll actually be available at the launch of this brand new boot. Now, since this is a brand new silo from Nike, it has to replace something, and that line is going to be the current Magista line. So the Magista Obra 2, the Opus 2, which is now technically the Obra 2 as well, all of those have been discontinued. This is what we have instead, the Phantom Vision, which has to be one of the strangest new names for a silo, considering that we already have the Hypervenom Phantom. This is now the Phantom Vision. So now, if you're familiar with the Magista Obra 2 that this replaces, you'll have noticed that these are quite a bit different. So I'm sure you have a lot of questions, and we're gonna go over all those questions in this video, such as, are they laceless because I can't see any laces? What are they like in comparison to the Magista Obra 2? This is a DF model. Is there a low-cut version as well? What's different about the feel? What's different about the fit? What's different about the performance? How much do they weigh? What do they look like on feet? What do they feel like on feet? Etc., etc. We're gonna cover all of that in today's video. So if you wanna learn more about them, please stick around. And if you are interested in a pair of these for yourself, I'll leave a little pop-up on screen, or you can click the first link down below. That'll take you to the review page on my website, where you'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up in multiple different colorways below their normal $275 retail price. The price remains unchanged from the Obra 2, which is a good thing. If you guys do end up enjoying the video, don't forget to support it with a like. And if you're new here watching for the first time, don't forget to hit that subscribe button along with the little bell notification for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear and phantoms. First things first, let's go over what is included with the boot, because they have actually made some changes. The first thing being the box itself, which you'll note is not orange in color. Instead, it's silver with black Nike branding. The same box that we recently saw introduced on the top-end Nike Mercurial Vapor 12 Elite in Neymar's World Cup signature colorway. It looks like this is the box that you'll now get with all the top-end models, where the takedowns will come with a standard orange Nike box like we're used to getting. And if you care, there's a look at the label. And then, of course, because this is the top-end model, they do include a string bag in matching colors and patterns. So you can see it's a light gray bag with dark gray strings. You're gonna find the signature orange triangle, which is a key design element of this new Phantom Vision, the Phantom Vision branding, and the oddly positioned Nike swoosh that actually looks pretty cool on a string bag. So my overall string bag rating here would be a 7.23 out of 10.486. Now, from the outside, the Phantom Vision Elite looks quite simple. Nothing that drastically different from the Nike brand. Basically an Obra 2 with a lace cover, maintains a Flyknit upper, maintains a mid-cut Flyknit collar, and of course has a sole plate and stud pattern. We've been seeing this from Nike ever since they launched the first Magista Obra back in 2014. But that couldn't be further from the truth. This is actually one of the most complicated boots I think Nike has ever put out, and that has everything to do with what you can't see. The internals, the Quadfit system, which this, by the way, is the first piece of footwear from the Nike brand to feature this technology that will not be exclusive to soccer. They're going to be rolling out this Quadfit system on all different kinds of footwear apparently over the next couple of years. So we're going to be seeing a lot more of it, and probably some pretty crazy evolution and variation of this particular technology that luckily is very good. What makes these different from any other Flyknit or knitted upper boot that's out there right now is that what you see on the outside is not what you're getting on the inside. If we talk about the Superfly 6 Elite as an example, the Flyknit on the outside is basically the entire structure of the upper. Yes, there's some extra lining materials for the sake of reinforcement, but that Flyknit base is there for the sake of touch, it's there for the sake of fit, it's there for the sake of lockdown, it's there for the sake of responsiveness, stability. It's doing absolutely everything. The Flyknit upper on this particular shoe is simply there for the sake of touch because all the structure is coming from this internal Quadfit system that is directly attached to this collar by way of basically Flyknit material that, as you can see when I kind of open it up a little bit, it flows across the top of the foot where the Ghost lacing system is, but that really has nothing to do with the Quadfit system. The Quadfit system, if I open up the shoe a little bit more, difficult for me to show you guys, see that light silver, almost white color? That is the Quadfit system, which, as you can see by this kind of internal view of the Phantom Vision Elite, basically is an internal sock that wraps your entire foot. It spans the entire shoe, and that's where all of the structure is coming from. It's made out of very special fabrics that are, I guess, a little bit more heavy duty than we're used to seeing from most knitted uppers. It looks like a regular Flyknit to a certain extent, but it's made out of almost a Kevlar type material. If you've ever worn cut-proof socks, that's kind of the type of sensation that it feels like. But because of the patterns, because of the direction of the fabrics themselves in terms of how it's all knitted together, once you tie the Ghost lacing system tight, it really does an excellent job of locking your foot in place and maintaining its structure. What's really cool though is that the two layers are completely separate. You have your Flyknit shell, and if I stick my hand on top of the lacing system, I can actually just run my hand all the way to the tip of the shoe and feel the two separate layers. My hand is literally in between the Flyknit and outside of the Quadfit system. So it's really unusual how they went about doing this, but the reason why they did it is because it does allow for that sock-like level of comfort and that sock-like wrap around your foot. There's an adjustability to a material like this where there isn't any break-in time required because it really doesn't have any stiffness to it. The structure is coming once it's kind of pulled around your foot with some little bit of tension, of course coming from the lacing system as well, but still maintains that softness and flexibility. Typically, when you have lockdown, this is a common characteristic with the Mercurial line as an example, the lockdown and the feel of that shoe is coming from the tightness around your foot. It's kind of squeezing your foot, holding it in place. This holds your foot in place without squeezing your feet, similar to how a sock would actually feel. So it's kind of got the sensation of some of the laceless boots that we have from the Adidas brand, but with lockdown that I would say is on par with something like a Mercurial, which is extremely unusual and something that we've never seen before. Not to mention, there pretty much is no break-in time. It immediately adjusts to your foot because it's essentially as soft and flexible as a sock would be. Speaking of laceless boots, Nike in their press release for this particular shoe shared some really interesting insight in the development of the Phantom Vision while also throwing some subtle shade at Adidas for their laceless products. Basically what they implied, never said it directly, but I feel like it was pretty straightforward in regards to the quotes that they listed, is that this is a shoe that was more or less intended to be laceless as a concept, both the boot and the Quadfit system. But they found through testing both in a lab as well as putting these on the feet of all kinds of different pro players, which if you're a boot spotter and you've been following what pros wear in training, we've been seeing blacked out variations of the Phantom Vision on the feet of pros for basically the better part of a year and a half now. And the conclusion that seemed to be unanimous amongst their pro players and through their testing is that having a lacing system made for better fit, better lockdown, better adjustability, and just better performance overall. So that is the main reason why these are not laceless. So for those that will ask the question, can you play with these without the laces? The answer to that question is yes, you can technically. You can technically do that with any shoe, but should you? No. So they're calling this their Ghost Lace system, which looks like this, but honestly, there's nothing that's too spectacularly different about this lacing system. The laces are totally normal, if you're wondering, and the lacing system is basically just these nylon lace loops that don't run all the way through. They're basically just there as connection points to the Quadfit system, with the central portion of that Quadfit system being filled in with this elasticated Flyknit, not for the sake of lockdown, but just simply so it has that little bit of stretch so you can get your foot in and out of the shoe, because the actual Quadfit material really doesn't have that much stretch to it. It's more of a structured type material, but you tie the laces tight, you basically pull from the two ends that stick out of the lace cover because you don't really have access to the entire lacing system, and it tightens it all the way down. It's a relatively shallow lacing system, so you're not gonna find that it's gonna have a super tight fit on your foot, but your shoe will feel very secure for some reason, which is something that is just very unusual. It doesn't feel like any other shoe that I've worn, in that you don't have anything squeezing your foot, but the shoe doesn't feel sloppy on your feet. It's kind of a bizarre sensation, but one that I really like. And if you're somebody that struggles with shoes feeling too tight, you're probably gonna like the feel of this Quadfit system on the Phantom Vision Elite. What I don't like about the Ghost Lace system is that because you have this lace cover, you don't really have access to the entire lacing system, meaning that you can't tighten it section by section, which I personally like to do with all of my boots. It's not a big deal, but it's kind of the same issue that I had with the X16 Plus and X17 Plus from the Adidas brand, of which I know a lot of people will try to compare this to, but really they are not at all the same. And also because you don't have great access to the lacing system, when you want to take the boots off, it's kind of difficult to loosen them properly. So it's a little bit more of a struggle to take them off rather than putting them on. Although I will also say that as far as putting them on and taking them off is concerned, this is the most difficult of all the mid-cut boots from the Nike brand when it comes to doing specifically that. It's an extra 10 seconds, not really that big of a deal, but definitely worth noting. Moving on to the parts of the boot that you can actually see, we have the Flyknit upper, which is pretty straightforward as far as Nike Flyknit goes. It's more open material here on the lateral side. It gets a little bit more dense on the medial side and kind of a high stress zone in the forefoot, fully elasticated across the top of the foot for fairly obvious reasons. You can even see when it stretches out, it does have some holes in there. That's just there for the sake of being able to get your foot in and out. And they covered the laces up because that's kind of a popular trend right now. People seem to think that's going to make you strike the ball better. Not necessarily the case, but it does give you a fairly clean striking surface, although there is a noticeable difference in texturing between this and the rest of the upper, because of course the parts that aren't elasticated have a NIKESKIN covering, but that NIKESKIN covering has a heavily texturized top layer. You can see in this triangle area, you're going to find the heaviest texture, or at least the biggest pattern, where it's this three-sided shape, but that three-sided shape is continued throughout the entire shoe. I know it's extremely difficult to see because it's very, very small, but when you run your finger along this upper, it feels legitimately like sandpaper. It almost feels like you could scrape your fingers on the upper of the shoe, which makes for a tremendous amount of grip on the ball without the need for any kind of rubberized striking element. I would say in terms of grip on the ball, both in regards to dribbling, controlling the ball, as well as shooting, this is the grippiest thing we've had from the Nike brand since the Nike T90 Laser 4 with its rubberized striking element. It's not quite at that level, but in comparison to anything else out there right now, grip on the ball, this definitely beats it out. The texturing is really, really interesting, and it's arguably the most unique aspect about this shoe in regards to how it feels on the ball. I really do like it. I wish the texturing would have continued across the top of the foot, because this is an area that is going to be making contact with the ball a lot, but for the most part, it's noticeable almost every single time that you kick the ball. They're kind of marketing this as somewhat of a control boot, so having that extra texture, they say, is going to improve your control. Obviously, touch is on you, not the boots on your feet. But if you like having that little bit of extra grip, you're definitely going to get it from this particular shoe. A little bit more heavy grip in this triangle area in orange just because of the heavier texturing, but you have that same texturing despite how it may look throughout the entire upper. Something that I was a little bit worried about with this particular shoe, being that you have two separate layers that are detached from each other, kind of like the Adidas Glitch, where I don't feel like the feel for the ball is necessarily all that great. The feel for the ball with this particular shoe is really good. They actually feel a lot thinner than I was expecting to be. There's not a lot of thickness to this upper. Yes, there's somewhat of a padded sensation because you do have two separate layers of knitted material, but for the most part, I would actually say that touch on the ball is on the thinner side. Also, because this is a top-end model, and we would expect it anyways, this has ACC, all conditions control technology, their wet control element that honestly, I don't think means anything. I don't think it does anything. I think it's just pure marketing, but having that texturing in wet weather, let me tell you, definitely does give you that little bit of extra grip that you won't get from any other boot from Nike or any other brand, ACC or not. Moving on to the rear of the shoe, Nike has made some kind of strange design choices here, but ultimately it feels really good, so there's not too much to complain about. It has an internal plastic heel counter, which is pretty much a direct carryover from the Obra 2, and then of course it's a mid-cut, but you'll notice that the Flyknit upper in pure platinum is completely separate from the collar itself. This is something that we're used to seeing on the low end $80 to $90 takedown models within the Nike brand that also have a collar, but they've done it here on their $275 top end Phantom Vision Elite. Why have they done this? Well, this is specified as DF on the box, which typically means that there is also going to be a low cut variation. That is not the case as of right now. I'm not sure if that's going to change in the future. Given the way that this is cut in particular, it almost seems like it was intended to kind of meet the top of this collar. I'm sure they could modify that in a low cut variation, but basically they've designed a shoe as a low cut first and then added a collar for the sake of adding a collar, which we're used to seeing from pretty much every single brand right now. So you can't really blame Nike too much for doing this. It is the trend. People seem to like it. And honestly, I don't think it looks bad on this particular shoe. Although, just like any other collar, it's pretty much meaningless to the feel and performance of the shoe. Nothing to do with fit. And unlike every other collar we've seen from Nike, while it's still made from Flyknit, this is a much more sock-like Flyknit in that it's very soft, has no structure to it, and really doesn't have that kind of more structured elasticated type yarn. This is just very sock-like, so it feels very good, and I think is there mostly for the sake of looks. And the fact that they did construct this as a low-cut shoe first, I think is really good because it means that the fit in the heel is very, very normal. There's no chafing at the back. It pretty much fits like a standard low-cut shoe, and internally, while it's very difficult for me to show you because it is quite dark in there, it just has a synthetic suede liner with a decent amount of padding, which feels really premium. Now, the insole is fully removable, and I have to say, it's really good. It's probably the best insole you can get from any top-end Nike boot right now. It has a really good quality synthetic suede lining on top. It's made from a single layer of this yellow foam, and then you're gonna find blue pour-on inserts in the forefoot big toe area, as well as under the heel for some extra underfoot cushioning, kind of like the Tiempo Legend 7 Elite insole, but with a better liner on top. The confusing part is something that I've been complaining about since they first started doing it, and that is the Nike Grip insole technology, which you'll find that logo on every single top-end insole from Nike, which up until this point has featured the same mesh lining that I've basically said from the beginning just feels like regular mesh. But somehow they've changed that to synthetic suede and it's still Nike Grip. Does that make any sense at all? Doesn't make sense to me. I don't think Nike Grip does anything, but this is a really good insole. Moving on to the sole plate and stud pattern. While the sole plate looks quite a bit different from the Magista Obra 2, it feels very similar to me. Pretty similar thickness, very similar flexibility, similar feel when it's on your feet, but still very solid, no complaints there whatsoever. If you're wondering about material, they didn't really specify anything, so I'm assuming that it's a regular TPU plastic, which again, is not a bad thing. Then you have the stud pattern, which is completely revamped in comparison to the previous generation Magistas that this replaces, of course, and I think it's hugely improved. It's way more aggressive. It compares more closely to the Mercurials, I think, than any other stud pattern currently on the market, which is kind of unusual given that this is marketed as a control boot, not necessarily a speed boot. But if you like aggressive traction, which honestly, I feel like 9 out of 10 people do, this just makes a lot of sense for almost any boot, not just the Phantom Vision. So as you can see, you have these very aggressive blades that are kind of all close together right here at the tip of the toe, your main push-off point when you're on your toes for a sprint. Really like how that feels, plenty of bite when pushing off. And then all the other studs, as you can see, are kind of their own unique hybrid conical bladed stud shape, but they dig in really, really nicely and do provide that aggressive bite that, again, you typically would only get from something like a Mercurial, but this comes very, very close. Then you have the bladed studs in the heel, which is pretty straightforward, but again, I like the overall design. It looks the part, it performs the part, but do keep in mind that this is a firm ground stud pattern made for use on natural grass. If you use this on artificial grass, it is quite clingy, probably not the safest thing in the world, and in terms of durability for, I guess, the long-term view of the boot, on artificial grass, wearing firm ground shoes probably isn't the best idea, although I'm sure they're going to be releasing these with an AG Pro stud pattern as well for those that do play exclusively on artificial grass. But for firm ground, really, really good. Very quickly, just to touch on the topic of durability, which, by the way, for those that will ask how long do I think these are going to last, I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. They just came out today, so nobody knows how durable these are, but it is worth noting that Nike has added a pretty significant reinforcement piece of plastic along the edge of the sole plate and the upper upper where they attach through the medial side of the forefoot, and then right there at the tip of the toe. That's there for the sake of durability and reinforcing that bond between the upper and the sole plate, something we've never really seen before from the Nike brand, but I'm glad they've done it on this particular shoe. And then there's the weight, and based on the look, you probably wouldn't expect these to be that light, and they aren't, but they're also not heavy. In a size 9.5 US, the Phantom Vision Elite DF weighs in at 7.7 ounces, which if we're comparing it to the model it replaces, the Magista Obra 2, those in the same size, depending on the colorway, weighed in at about 7.6. So you're talking about a weight difference of 0.1 ounces, which is essentially nothing. You could wear the shoes and have 0.1 ounces of dirt stuck on the outside, even if the shoes aren't that dirty. So the weight hasn't really changed coming from the Obra 2. I didn't think those were heavy. I don't think these are heavy either. They're relatively lightweight and on par with most top-end boots out there right now. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, you can't really loosen the laces that much because of the lace cover. You just don't have access to it. And they are a little bit more difficult to put on and take off than other mid-cut Nike boots or other mid-cut boots in general, mainly again because of the Quadfit system and the lace cover. So putting them on doesn't really look any different. I do it the same way. It just requires a little bit more, I guess, effort. So I like to take one thumb, second thumb, kind of support both the front and back of the shoe and really stretch out the opening as big as possible. Kind of slide my foot in like this, turn it over, and then use my back thumb again to kind of, as a shoehorn almost, to support the back heel counter so I'm not crushing that. And then kind of just slowly pull my foot in, adjust the collar around the edges. And then again, because the lace cover covers everything up, all you have to do is just leave the two ends out and then pull them like that, tie the laces up, and you're good to go. And whether or not you want to leave them on top of the lace cover or tucked in, that's completely up to you. So on feet, the Phantom Vision Elite feels very unique. There's nothing else that I would compare it to directly, in that the tightness and the way that it wraps your foot is coming from both the lacing system, which basically attaches the two sides of the boot together, but you also get a lot of structure from the Quadfit material itself in regards to how it wraps your foot, holds everything in place, but at the same time feels remarkably flexible. Again, the shoes don't have this sensation of squeezing your feet, even though they're really tight and secure around my feet, if that makes any sense at all. The upper is soft, it's flexible, there's pretty much nothing to break in, just as Nike claims, which companies claim a lot of things, it's not always true. I legitimately do feel like these don't require much in the way of break-in time. And as far as the heel is concerned, especially for a mid-cut shoe, that rolled up, it does feel kind of like a low. So there's not too much to get used to in the heel area. Of course, with new boots, that's not to say that you're not gonna get any kind of foot cramping or some kind of minor discomfort. These definitely could give you blisters, as any boots could. But in terms of out-of-the-box comfort, based on my own experience, these are really comfortable, and I didn't have any issues over the first couple of wears whatsoever. As far as the overall fit and width is concerned, fit-wise, if you're wondering how these compare to the Magista Obra 2 that they replace, I would say that the shape has been, I guess, narrowed ever so slightly, but they're still gonna be wide enough for most people. I think the Magistas were one of the wider lines from Nike, and these kind of stay true to that for the most part. They've lowered the volume a little bit, which I definitely appreciate. I think these fit better in general. It's a slightly tweaked shape that I would say is more along the lines of Tiempo rather than previous generation Magista, which is not a bad thing. Again, they're not overly tight. They don't have that squeezing your foot sensation like Mercurials do, but they do fit really, really well. So width-wise, as long as you don't have super wide feet, I don't think you're gonna have any issues. And speaking of wide feet, obviously stretching is something that's worth talking about because of this Quadfit system. It's really not going to allow the shoes to stretch all that much. The internal part is what has all the structure. That's what's holding your feet. So the upper is not really going to stretch. The way that they fit and feel out of the box is the way they're going to feel for their entire lifespan. So please keep that in mind. And then as far as sizing is concerned, I went with the 9.5 US. And because the shape has been changed, it seems to be modified from the Obra 2 sizing. These seem to fit more like the Mercurials as well as the Hypervenoms as far as sizing goes. So I'm wearing these in a 9.5 US. My feet are about a 9.25, and the fit and the length is pretty much perfect. So if you are looking to order a pair of these for yourself, I would strongly recommend going true to size in order to achieve the best possible fit. So in conclusion, should you go out and buy the Phantom Vision Elite? Well, if you're coming from the Magista Obra 2, while this is the direct replacement, the unofficial Obra 3, it's a very, very different experience in regards to fit as well as feel. I personally think that this is one of the best fitting knitted shoes, if not the best fitting knitted shoe on the market right now, for something that doesn't have that squeezing your foot type sensation. If you like that, go for Mercurials with that Flyknit upper, or even the Vapor 12 Pro, really solid option. But if you like that sock-like sensation, something that has the sensation of a laceless boot in that it's not overly tight on your feet, but with the security and responsiveness of something like a Mercurial, that to me is really the appeal of this particular shoe. Not to mention, there's pretty much no break-in time. The comfort is excellent. I don't mind the way that they look. The touch on the ball I think is quite good. While I tend to prefer something that's a little bit more padded, these are more on the thinner side, I still like the way they feel. And the fact that they added all that texturing for the sake of extra grip on the ball, something that has been basically absent from the entire football boot landscape over the last couple of years, I absolutely love that about this particular shoe. And the more aggressive stud pattern, I always liked the Mercurial stud pattern. I was just never a huge fan of wearing Mercurials, but you're getting something very close to that with the Phantom Vision. So as a whole, while it's not a perfect product, while it can be viewed as kind of weird looking, I really do like these quite a lot. So I think if everything I described sounds good to you, then yes, I can highly recommend the Phantom Vision Elite. Anyways, guys, that is it for my review. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, be sure to support it with a like. Again, if you're interested in a pair for yourself, first link down below, that'll take you to the review page on my website. You'll find buy it now links with exclusive SR4U coupon codes, where you'll be able to pick these up below their normal $275 retail price. If you have any questions, which I'm sure there will be plenty of them, leave them down below in the comments and I'll do my best to get an answer out to you as soon as I possibly can. Subscribe if you haven't already for daily videos on all the latest and greatest soccer gear. You can find all my social media information linked down below in the description as well. Other than that, guys, hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching.